Hey, this is Ellen Silva. Today we're going to talk about adding a zipper to your favorite sweater. A zipper can make a sweater so much more functional. It can fix problems such as a gaping cardigan front, and it can add a little pop of color, as it does in this sweater here. A misbehaving front edge is very nicely smoothed out by the addition of a zipper. I suppose I'll use buttons again someday, but for now I am really sold on zippers. The real key to great zipper installation is preparation, and that means block that sweater really well. While you're blocking, use pins to square up corners very tidily to make sure that stripes meet exactly, and just to make sure the edges are coming together the way you want. But don't block under tension. You want your finished garment to be its natural length, the length that it wants to be. That'll make sure the zipper install is very smooth. All right, the first and probably the most important step in installing a zipper is to baste. Baste, baste, baste. You cannot baste enough. I start up here at the top. Remove those clips so that I can line up the top very precisely and exactly. And I start right in those top stitches. I use a double strand of thread. I like quilting thread. It's smooth and comes out easily. And I repeat the stitch right in the spot that I started it because, in fact, I'm going to repeat it again. I do not want those edges to move relative to each other when I'm basting the zipper in finally. First, we're just basting the sweater together so that everything will be lined up very perfectly. And I can skip down an inch or so with each one, but each stitch, instead of just making it one stitch, I make it at least two. A running stitch could very possibly shift as you go. And when I hit a spot like here where it's the bottom of the ribbing and I want that spot to be very evenly matched, I'm going to go ahead and give it 3 stitches. I do not want that moving. 1, 2, and this is the 3rd stitch in that spot. Now I'll move my way on down the sweater, giving a couple of stitches at each spot so it won't shift. I'm coming down to where my stripes are nicely lined up in my blocking process, and I'm going to now remove the blocking clips, which is going to let me really line those stripes up. You can see from my I-cord I have a little bit of a blip where the color comes up, and I want to make sure at least those two match, even if they don't match the rest of their stripe. And when I get down here to them, I'm going to put several stitches in. And again, at each spot where I want it to perfectly match up, I'll put some extra stitches in. Well, I'm going to continue on down the front of the sweater, and when I get done, we'll come back to start, guess what? Do some more basting as we baste the zipper in place next. Turn your sweater inside out and lay it flat, checking how the zipper fits your opening. Turns out we have a bit of extra zipper here, not enough to require shortening the zipper at the top, luckily. It is possible to do that, and if we had more than about an inch to ease in over the 27-inch sweater length, we probably would, but we'll take the easy easing approach on this one. Before we do that, though, we want to neaten up the top of the zipper by stitching down the tabs. The trick here is patience and tiny stitches, and honestly, redoing it once or twice until you're happy with your work. Next, firmly anchor the top and the bottom of the zipper just where you want them to end. Use lots of stitches. Thread is cheap. Blocking mats and pins make the job of easing in the zipper both simple and accurate. Just stretch the sweater very slightly to accommodate the extra zipper, placing additional blocking pins along the way to hold everything in uniform tension. And now we baste. You can start at the bottom or the top. It's probably a good idea to work in the same direction on both sides, but really we've done such a good job of stabilizing everything that I don't worry too much about that. Put a double stitch every inch or so. Again, we don't want things shifting when we finally get around to sewing. You want to baste a little more closely in this case than you did when you were just basting the fronts together. Catch just the front layer of the sweater if possible. That way you can put your hand up inside the sweater to better control your fabric when you're doing the final sewing. I like to stop basting a bit below the top edge of the sweater. I want to have the flexibility to do some tiny adjustments at the very end if needed. And finally, about 2 hours into this process, we can start sewing. The good news is we are well over halfway done. Use your preferred sewing needle and thread. I choose polyester thread because it absolutely will not shrink in future washes. And I find that working with a small needle helps me take small stitches. I like a thimble for punching through any thick bits of the zipper tape, but you may not need one. Anchor your thread with a small knot behind the zipper tape, and then begin taking small stitches that catch the edge of the zipper tape at a 90-degree angle. Follow that with a short stitch through the side of a column of stitches that lines up with the edge of the zipper. Your goal is to hide the traveling portion of the thread completely within a strand of yarn. It's easy to maintain a uniform stitch length. Just use the stitches as a guide. You're trying to hit, maybe 6 to 8 stitches per inch. It really is pleasant to do this sewing, and it goes fast. Just keep following your chosen column to the top of the garment, carefully anchoring the last bit of zipper tape just where you want it. You might worry about distorting your garment by sewing into the fabric or that your zipper won't be well enough attached, but you honestly don't have to. The magic of taking many tiny stitches is that any stress is well distributed so the fabric isn't distorted, and with so many points of connection, the zipper is certainly going to stay put. Well, it's time to test that out. Very, very carefully remove all of the basting. Do this in good light with sharp scissors and nothing stronger than tea in your cup. And ta-da! You did it! You have a beautifully sewn-in zipper. I add one last touch to many of my zippers. I want to avoid having the knitted fabric flip open and reveal the zipper underneath. The simple solve for this is a single row of running stitches worked down the middle of the zipper tape, just catching the zipper on one side, then the inside of the sweater on the other. This is not a seam that receives any real stress. It's just a little bit of a reminder to the edge of the sweater to hug close to the zipper, so the stitches can be fairly long, and I get it done in a jiffy. Adding a zipper to your sweater does take a bit of work, but none of it is as difficult or time-consuming as knitting the sweater was in the first place, and it makes the garment oh so wearable. With careful and patient basting, lots of it, you can be sure your project will turn out fantastically.